2 Sundays ago here at the CSC, we celebrated youth, those 35 and under. I demarcated it to the objection of many. Because the readings lent themselves to stories of young people who heard something stir inside of them. We talked then of the joys and the gifts of being young, the joys and the gifts young people bring to the church and to the world. Now, at this point in the liturgical year, we begin to see this same Jesus, this young Jesus, growing up quickly, growing out right there before our very eyes. He's growing up and out of his youth right now in these stories. He is maturing, really. He is emerging from the shadows and the unknowns into a whole new dimension, a whole new way of being in the world. He is emerging. It happens to the best of us. And I mean that literally. It's what happens to the best of us. As you know, Jesus was the firstborn of his family. As the firstborn in a Jewish home, Jesus would have received special attention from his parents. Trained by Joseph as a woodworker, he was pretty much assured of a modest but average standard of living. Being a pious Jew from a pious family, he was assured of some measure of honor within that family. He did not marry, and so that made Jesus, in his own Jewish world, atypical, marginal to the rest. Jesus could have easily lived out his days in peace in Nazareth, but he didn't. Surprise of surprises. From that base, Jesus emerged in an entirely different direction than any could have predicted, especially even his own family. They did not see it coming. Jesus chose an alternative path. In 28 AD, the Common Era, in his early 30s, he left his comfortable life in Nazareth, to become an itinerant preacher and proclaimer of the kingdom of God. He connected to the movement of John the Baptist, who was his mentor and the matrix of the rest of his life. That was a huge step away from Nazareth for him to join John the Baptist's community there in the desert. But then he emerged again. He took again another different direction from John's movement to begin his own mission, to traveling extensively, reaching out to all he encountered, especially the poor and the sinner and the marginalized, the disenfranchised. Emerging here in this scene, the scene you just heard in the gospel, he takes on another unexpected challenge that came out of left field for him. He was just there teaching in the synagogue that day, and little did he expect that all of a sudden some man was going to throw himself at his feet, writhing, either crazy, mentally ill, or for sure possessed by a demon. So much for that teaching. I don't even like when you guys have a heart attack while I'm teaching. 7 hours out the window. Once again, though, out of left field, he didn't expect this to happen. This threw him off, and yet it didn't. He was exposed to evil from the very beginning. Evil took him on, and he took evil on. Right there in his first public appearance in Mark's Gospel, it pitted him against the forces of evil that were working against him at the time. In this scene, Jesus throws down the gauntlet, and he takes on this evil that was totally unexpected there that day in the temple. And it was just the beginning of him taking on that evil for the rest of his life. It was just so clear here that what is played out for us in this person, Jesus, is this always emerging person. Jesus was always emerging from here to there, there to there, there to there. He always stood on what you might want to call the domain of emergence. The moment became for him the domain for the beginning of the next level of emergence. He always stood on that domain, and so do we. As you know, last week I had the opportunity to study with the Vatican Observatory. I learned so much. I was looking so forward to learning there. I had two goals. One was to have more learning, and one was to have more wonder. And I could check off both. Of the many things I learned, one of the most important to me was to begin to see more clearly than I ever have, that the universe is always seeking a new domain of emergence. The entire universe is always seeking a new domain of emergence. The universe sought and found new domains of emergence as galaxies and stars within those galaxies unfolded. And when the earth was formed and life emerged within those oceans, and as we humans appeared within Earth's community of life, everything was always emerging, and it still is. There is always in all things this mysterious impulse to transcend the existing order of things. Always this mysterious impulse to transcend the existing order of things. There is always this unfolding and unfolding out in the universe. There is always this possibility of newness, new ways of being for everything. At every moment, the universe stands on this domain of more, of becoming more. There is built into things the fact that this can always emerge and become something new. We are part of that. At every moment of our lives, each of us and our entire society and all of our cultures of the world and our institutions, our churches, can emerge to become something more than they've ever been. I hear so many people comment, for example, in this institution called church, this community of believers, about Pope Francis. Where did he come from? How did this happen? Everybody who voted for him was appointed by people with a whole different ideology, it seemed. And yet there was this rupture, a rupture in existence almost, that led to this man being our shepherd and our servant now, who nobody could have ever expected, nobody could have ever seen coming. In this old institution that many of us have barely held on to. Everything, you see, every culture, every institution, every society, and every human being is called to be a domain of emergence. I'm telling you this, if we begin to see this, we will have an unbelievable hope. We will never despair, neither of institutions, nor of our own lives, nor of each other, ever. This yields a remarkable hope. We are part of that. We are part of that. This next week, I'm hiding away for a few days later in this week, as I'm given to do around this time, because it's my birthday. And I like to escape on my birthday because I like to reflect on my life as it's come to be. Birthdays, perhaps for you also, seem to provide me with one of those occasions where I can look at the big picture of my life, the whole kit and caboodle, as we used to say, the whole big picture of my life, and see where I've come from and from where I came. Every year I toast how different I am now than I was before. Every year I manage at the end of the day to toast this emerging Gary. Have you ever stopped, maybe on your birthday or for some other occasion, maybe your anniversaries? Have you ever stopped and let yourself think about how you have emerged over your years? And the things that came together at a certain moment of time on what they call that domain, the things that came together, this person, this job, this homily, this community, this course you took, accidentally almost, that became the occasion of that new and surprising direction you took, that new way of you being in this world. The truth is, at every moment of my life, I can emerge into something more than I've ever been before. This is an enormous truth. And it's always teaching me. And it's always giving me reason for hope, not just in my future, but in the future of all the peoples of all the earth. You and I are invited into ultimate mystery. We're invited into ultimate mystery, not to rest there, but to find a new domain of emergence. Just like the emerging Jesus we see in the Gospels now and for the rest of this year. Just like the emerging Jesus, I am emerging. I can, and I am indeed, always emerging. That mysterious impulse is in me. That mysterious impulse is in you too, and anybody alive. The reality of that is why the church refuses to give up on anybody ever. These are just more scientific terms to describe what we've always known. The possibilities in the human being to change and to grow. But now we see how it's connected to the whole cosmos, how it's reflected back to us all the time. The reality of this is that the church won't give up on anybody ever. From the moment of conception, after a terrible crime somebody's committed, when somebody's sick or feeble or old, even after death. Even our whole doctrine of purgatory, it seems to suggest this emergence can still happen on the other side of death even. We relentlessly recognize that where I am now is always the domain of emerging. The reality of that is why I am no longer afraid of my restlessness. I am a restless man. I've confessed that here before. And in that restlessness, there are times I've made big mistakes. I used to think it a problem, and so I always saw the grass is greener on the other side. That's one of the ways that my restlessness always shows up for me, is the grass is greener on the other side. But now I know. Now I know that this restlessness in me is part of this divine creativity. Part of this divine creativity that will always shake my foundations for the next thing. Now I know that restlessness in me that I used to be afraid of, only afraid of, now I know how that becomes a domain of emergence for me, and that's how that possibility of emergence shows up for me. Restlessness has shaped my life. Restlessness has enabled me to sense that there's something more than this. Restlessness to become more is built into the universe. That restlessness has become the interface of my life with the cosmos. And it is the interface of your life with that cosmos. We need not be afraid of our restlessness or the restlessness of our kids or our friends or our families because of where it might take them. Because of the fact that everything is emerging. What presently seems impossible might actually come forth in our future. And if you doubt that, take a look at the night sky.